everybody. If you could take your seats, we're about to get started. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. Like, really, really appreciate it. We're going to start with the pledge, led by Dorian Cromartie, our third vice chair and a veteran. Dorian, it is all you. The flag is up there.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you, Dorian. Thanks again for being here. Happy Pride Month, happy belated Father's Day, and most importantly, happy Juneteenth, everybody. You know, the truth is we really have two Independence Days in this country. July 4th, 1776, declaring our freedom from Great Britain, and June 19th, 1865, finally declaring our freedom for all enslaved people throughout the United States, 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was issued. It may be 158 years since slavery was formally ended, but we know this fight is far from over. Our Black community fights every day against systemic racial injustices rooted in slavery and segregation, particularly here in Wilmington with our very regrettable history. We see it every day. We see it in wages and housing and healthcare, in extreme racial gerrymandering and restrictive voter ID laws. We see it in the disproportionality data in our school systems. We see it literally everywhere, every day, in every aspect of life. And we should be reminded of it every day too. We have 500 US colored troops buried here in the Wilmington National Cemetery. In fact, the USCT comprised more than half of the 2,000 Union deaths in the battle for Wilmington. Once the city was liberated, it was the USCT that kept our shores and freedoms and protected us from any other infringement. It was the USCT who also represented the Native Wilmingtonians in all regards. And without these brave Native soldiers, we may not even have a Juneteenth, and Wilmington certainly wouldn't be what it is today. This holiday marks a legendary milestone in American history, but we still have so much work left to do. As Democrats, we will continue every day to fight for equal rights, basic civil rights, and voting rights. We would not be the powerful political party that we are today, and Joe Biden wouldn't be president without our Black citizens. And I promise, as the chair of the NHCDP, that we will do everything we possibly can to engage these voters and empower them, improve their lives, and represent them to the best of our absolute ability. So on Juneteenth and every day, let's honor the fortitude, resilience, patriotism, and bravery of our Black community, which has endlessly contributed to Wilmington despite enduring centuries of oppression. I know that holding our candidate forum tonight is not ideal by any means, and I sincerely apologize for it. With a very tight schedule between the convention and the open filing period, we did not have any dates in June where all of our candidates could make it, and this is what we had to settle on, and I know it is not ideal. But this forum will be recorded for anybody who's not here tonight, and it'll be available to the whole party by the end of the week. So let's get this shindig started. We have many elected officials here tonight. Commissioner Rob Zappel, thank you for being with us. District 7 Chair Tom Simmons, up in the back. Former City Councilman Paul Lawler. Former School Board Member Judy Justice. And an especially big thank you to our rock star moderator, Ben Schachtman from WHQR. He does not really need an introduction. I'm not sure that there's any more well-respected journalist in all of Wilmington. After receiving his master's from NYU and his PhD from SUNY Stony Brook, which is where I grew up watching softball games on Long Island, he worked for the Port City Daily since 2016, then became their managing editor in 2018, and now fights for government accountability and transparency at WHQR. And we are so lucky to have him tonight, and I cannot thank him enough. So let's give Ben and all of our candidates a very warm welcome. Thank you all for being here.
All right, thank you all for being here. I appreciate it. I know there's lots of things you could do with a Monday evening, and I'm happy to see people here. A couple quick ground rules. We're going to do introductions for each of the candidates. Those will be 2 minutes each. The questions, we're going to have 2-minute responses. We're going to have a timer coming from somewhere over there. There you go. You can see it big letters, so you know when your time is up. You're all adults. And I will tell you what I would tell Republicans, and that is that voters are smart. Their eyes glaze over when you issue platitudes, and they want to hear specific policy, suggestions that you would put forward. What would you put forward in a resolution? I don't care that you love the earth or queer people or black people. That's great. That's good. But what would you put in language to put in front of council? What would you actually do? That's what voters want to hear. I think that's what you guys want to hear. And as journalists, that's what I want to hear. So without further ado, or grandstanding by me, let's do introductions. I'm just going to start way down here at the end of the table with David Joyner. Go ahead.
Great, thank you very much. To those who I have not yet met, my name is David Joyner. I'm one of your assistant district attorneys here in New Hanover County, and I'm an 8th generation Eastern North Carolinian. I'm the proud son of 2 public school teachers who are now retired, and I've been a public school student from my first day of kindergarten until the day that I graduated from UNC Chapel Hill. From there, I went to Campbell University to study law, and then I moved back to Southeastern North Carolina, where I work for our district attorney, Ben David. My caseload includes family violence, which is domestic violence, child abuse, and violence against women. I prosecute impaired driving cases, and I also prosecute firearms offenses. I'm on the board of directors of our LGBTQ Center here in Wilmington, the LGBTQ Center of the Cape Fear Coast, and I'm on the board of directors or the church board at St. James Episcopal Church downtown. I'm running for Wilmington City Council because I believe that we need city councilors who are going to be energized to work on issues around affordable housing, transportation, and the environment, and I'm looking to bring my experience from the court system to our outlook on public safety here in Wilmington. Thank you very much for being here tonight. I'm looking forward to talking to you all as we move forward in this campaign. I believe that I'm uniquely positioned to turn out engagement amongst younger voters. I'm the youngest candidate on this platform tonight at 29. I'm the youngest candidate who has filed any paperwork in this election from either party to move forward for Wilmington City Council. I also believe that I'm uniquely engaged to turn out LGBTQ voters and voters who care about the environment. Those are issues that I'm going to champion as a leader here in Wilmington. And again, I'm looking forward to the discussion tonight. Thanks very much.
Councilman Kevin Spears.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Councilman Kevin Spears from the city of Wilmington. I am a lifelong Wilmingtonian. 46 years I have lived in this space known as Wilmington, also known as the Port City. It is great pride. It brings me great pride to serve on the Wilmington City Council, but not only to serve on the council, but to serve this community. And when I say community, I mean the entirety of this community. I don't know much more to say than how proud I am of you being proud of the job that I've done. We understand the roadblocks. We understand the battles that we've endured in these past 4 years. And I look to continue to fight. Yes, fight. It's been a fight. It's been a tough battle. But look at the progress that we've made. We've made plenty of progress, and there's still more to go. So let's not quit in the middle of the fight. Let's continue to fight. Let's continue to build bridges. Let's continue to work together to make Wilmington a better place for us all. Not just for people who, already have some money or people who come to town and, they sell a home somewhere else and come here and can live a better life, and they're not really concerned about the livelihood of others or the safety of others. Let's put everybody in a good place. That's just been my motto for so long, and it's something that I live by. So I'm just grateful to be here and look forward to a great night tonight. Thank you.
Salette Andrews.
Because I'm short. I'm Salette Andrews, and I'm a proud, pro-choice, progressive woman who's running for city council because I believe that a woman's place is anywhere that decisions are being made. I was born to a military father and a first-generation American mother. My father died when he was 43 years old, leaving a young widow and 5 children under the age of 18. So I watched my mom struggle to get us through school. We all put ourselves through college and started our own families. After school, I joined the Air Force and became an air traffic controller. And I learned there that it takes a lot of teamwork and a lot of perseverance to get big things moving.
I'm a cancer survivor, and I am also the mother of a son who died of cancer at the age of 22. He was also a veteran. He served in Iraq near the toxic burn pits, and so pollution is really personal to me. When I find out that we have a corporation who's dumping chemicals in our drinking water, in our only source of drinking water, I know that not only do we need to get that cleaned up, but we need to make the polluter pay. Not the ratepayers, not all of us here, but we need to make the polluters pay. Got a lot of other issues to talk about. We, mainly the number one issue on the taxpayer-funded citizen survey, which is traffic. We'll talk about that some more tonight. But thank you very much, all of you, for being here, and I ask you for your vote.
Marlowe Foster?
Thank you, Ben. Can everybody hear me okay? First of all, I want to thank Ben for being here to kind of moderate this forum for us, and I want to thank the New Hanover County Democratic Party and everyone out in the audience for being here. My name is Marlowe Foster. I've met most of you in the room, but for those I haven't met, it's nice to meet you this evening. I know we're going to dig deeper into the issues. I will say to start that I'm focused on 3 specific areas. The first is job creation. The second is public safety, with a particular focus on juvenile crime and the opioid crisis. And the third is housing affordability. But I think more importantly, it's important for you to know me as an individual and who I am. I'm the middle child of 5, born to 2 educators in Farmville, Virginia. My dad was a high school principal. My mom was a guidance counselor and a home ec teacher. I have the blessing right now of being a full-time caregiver to them. My dad fell and broke his neck a year ago, so they have moved in with us. So we are definitely the Brady Bunch of the Foster household. I am a husband of 24 years to my 5th grade sweetheart, Evelyn Foster. We have 2 amazing kids, Christian Foster and Noah Foster. And I just have to brag on my son as the doting dad. He went to a national Taekwondo tournament this past week and won first place in 2 categories, sparring and forms, and tied for first in another category. So that's the proud father that I am. I can't wait to dig deeper into the issues. It's great to be with you this evening.
All right, let's get started. The first question I want to ask the candidates is about economic development. There have been some city and sometimes city-county incentives put forward to create jobs. I have heard many times, who are those jobs for? And I'm curious how you think about it and what you would do from the dais of the city of Wilmington about that. And Marlowe, I'll start with you. I'm going completely randomly here.
Thank you, Ben, for starting with me. Economic development and incentives. There's always a lot of discussion about the appropriateness of incentives in terms of attracting business, and I think the reality is that is where we are. The critical piece in the way that it ties to my campaign effort is the whole job creation. I interviewed with a young lady named Amelia who works for the UNCW newspaper, and what she said to me is that, Marlowe, there are students at UNCW who want to stay in Wilmington, who want to work here, but we don't know where the jobs are coming from. And so as we work to attract and retain these companies, if we provide incentives for them, it needs to be very clear that those jobs need to be targeted for our citizens and that we have the workforce available to fill those jobs. So that would be my position.
Councilman Spears.
I'm glad you did that, Ben. You talk about job creation. I'll steal a little bit of Marlowe's thunder here when he talks about UNCW students who are here and who wanted to stay here. I am one of those students. I have a information technology degree from UNCW. I have a computer engineering technology degree, associate's degree from Cape Fear Community College. And for some reason, I just could not leave this area. Maybe it was God who wanted me to stay and do the work that I'm doing. But I found a way. But earlier this year in February, we went on a trip to Fort Lauderdale with the Chamber of Commerce. And there were a lot of business owners and movers and shakers on that trip. And one morning we were having a discussion before we went out to visit Fort Lauderdale. And so many people were talking about the talent that they could not find. And I just couldn't take it anymore. And I stood up and I said, I can't sit here consciously and let you say this. Because I know hundreds of thousands of people who want to live here, who have the skills to do the job that you're requesting. What you have to do is remove the barrier to employ people. I also want to talk about the digital bridge, which was my baby, something that I brought to Tony McEwen when he was the liaison for the council, where we were creating internships with film. I was also behind the film project as well, but film, healthcare industry, in different industries where we would take people from the lower socioeconomic status and not just, we didn't ostracize people by age, people who were looking to get into new careers and things of that nature. And we're still working on the digital bridge, but if you talk about job creation and you talk about livable wages and things like that, I'm the person that's been waving the flag to get that done.
I'm going to ask you guys, because we only have the room for so long, even if it's a really great response, just hold your applause to the end so we can keep moving. Salette Andrews.
Thank you. So we have a lot of good news lately. First of all, Wilmington's unemployment rate is at 3.3%. It's a 50-year low, which is great news. Last year, between the city, the state, and the city, the county, and the state spent $2.6 million in incentives for companies to bring in 1,000 jobs, which is great. We had the nonprofit, nonpartisan Milken Institute rated Wilmington the 7th fastest growing economy in the country, which is also great news. But all of those things bring with them some trouble as well. So first of all, the very low unemployment rate has meant that we have some very critical jobs in both government and the private sector that have gone unfilled. And that's not a good thing. The same Milken Institute article that rated, or report that rated Wilmington the 7th fastest growing economy also rated us 3rd from the bottom in housing affordability, behind only Dallas and Austin, Texas. So that's not good. And then finally, the incentives to 4 different companies to bring in 1,000 jobs is good. That's what I call economic hunting, the big game hunting. But we also need to pay attention to economic gardening, which is giving incentives, employment incentives, education, training to our local businesses, small business loans, low interest loans, to our local businesses, and grow them from our Wilmington supply here. So.
David?
Thanks very much. So in addition to being the son of 2 public school teachers, I'm the grandson of a plumber and an electrician who each started their own small business. So I want to be committed to fostering the small businesses that we have here, fostering the trades industries that we have here, and making sure that those are strong. I think that a conversation about economic development starts with making sure that we have a strong economic footing and foundation for industries like our hospitality industry, industries like our film industry, and supporting our upcoming arts community, I think are all really important things that we need to be mindful of as we're having this conversation. To me, when we're talking about are Wilmingtonians able to work the jobs in Wilmington, my question is, are our first responders from our communities, are our nurses from our communities, are our teachers from our communities? Or are we importing all of those jobs from the surrounding area because people have been forced out and pushed out because of housing affordability? I'm sure that's a topic that we're going to get to tonight, but I think that it starts with noting that those are the industries that are going to be the barometer and the litmus test for how we are doing economically as a city. Again, targeting to make sure, I want to echo the comments that were made earlier. Are these jobs that are coming here for Wilmingtonians, or are these jobs going to be to pull in other people and to continue to grow our community? We need to make sure that they're for the people who are here currently. And I want to highlight that as we are going and courting new industries, as we are going and courting new companies to come into Wilmington, North Carolina, I want there to be a focus on green jobs, whether that's something in industry, whether that's something in science, but making sure that people know that Wilmington is open for business for the green economy. And I think particularly as you look at our strong public institutions, our public colleges and universities in North Carolina. There are people in my generation who are graduating, who are looking to start those businesses, who are excited about what those things can be, and we need to be the place that they land to build those from the ground up.
All right, thank you guys. All right. The number one thing people in Wilmington spend their money on is housing, and they spend a lot of their money on it. I believe over a third of our residents are housing burdened, which means they spend too much damn money on rent. How would you tackle this? Let's start with you, Salette. You won the affordable prize in the affordable housing question. It's everyone's favorite.
Yeah. So my philosophy around affordable housing basically revolves around two main points. First of all, if you work full-time in Wilmington, you ought to be able to live in Wilmington. And secondly, that we have to make sure that our new housing, that our affordable housing supply, because supply is definitely part of the equation, we have to make sure that we uphold the integrity of existing neighborhoods when we do that. I've talked with many residents who, again, their number one issue is traffic. And so we need to ensure that when we're putting in new housing, that first of all, that it's truly affordable, because a lot of the new housing that's going in is not, and affordability is not being marketed as affordable housing. But second of all, that it upholds the integrity of the existing neighborhoods, that we're not putting too much traffic onto there. Right now, that there's a bill in the Senate that would allow developers to bypass all local zoning regulations if they put in 20% affordable housing. And how they define affordable housing is 50% of it has to be at 80% AMI, area median income, and the other 50% at 100% AMI. Folks, that's not affordable housing, that's market rate. So, and for that, they will get to bypass any regulations, any local zoning regulations. That is entirely a giveaway to developers. It is not a way to ensure affordable housing. So we, as elected officials and as citizens, need to oppose that effort.
David?
So again, I want to highlight that my barometer for whether we have affordable housing in Wilmington, North Carolina, is whether our teachers, our nurses, and our first responders can live here. We don't need a formula to tell us what affordable housing is. We don't need a prescribed number from the federal government. We need to know, can our first responders, our educators, and our nurses afford to live here? And if they can't, then we don't have affordable housing in Wilmington. I think that we have got to be willing to develop more densely. And when I say more densely, I mean things that include apartments, that include condos, that includes multifamily units, or multifamily buildings, structural units. And we have to be able to build those in a way that are going to combat NIMBYism, frankly, and be willing to stand up and say, this is the reality of Wilmington, North Carolina, because we don't have anywhere to go out, we have to go up. We have to do that because we have to protect our wetlands. We cannot have city councilors who are entertaining building in places that we know are going to damage our environment moving forward. We have to build up instead of out, and we have to do that in a way that makes sense for our traffic. You know, there are some pretty high-profile projects right now that the criticisms of them, the biggest criticisms, are that they're going to interrupt the flows of our standing neighborhoods, and they're going to make it more dangerous for the children, in particular of families who live there. So I think that comes down to city councilors who can be smart about zoning, city councilors who can articulate specific expectations for developers and for builders that are coming in, rather than just giving a thumbs up or a thumbs down, being able to articulate what needs to change about a project to make it acceptable. And I want to commend Councilman Spears for a recent conversation that was had on council about there was going to be a Wawa, and there was a very lengthy conversation about how it was going to interrupt traffic flow, how perhaps the builder was not arguing in good faith about the way that the traffic flow was going to be, and Councilman Spears was willing to stand up along with Charlie Rivenbark and vote no on that. It ultimately passed, but we need people on council who are going to build coalitions to hold those folks accountable, to make sure that we're building smart, we're building up, and we're building in a way that is economically sustainable and, environmentally sustainable and economically affordable.
Kevin?
So I'll say the one thing that I don't think anyone else will say. we are underhoused and overdeveloped. Can you agree with that? So, you know, it's the gift and the curse of where we live. We're really popular. But I am, you know, one of the few on council who ask developers when they come before us, what's the price point for your new development? You know, and I often challenge staff about what we're requiring, what we're giving away when a project comes to us and they say, well, we will throw in an affordable housing piece. 200 units, and we're only asking for 10%. So we only want 20 units out of a 200 unit project development, and we call that affordable. And then also you have to look at, what does affordable mean? Affordable housing has taken on this negative definition of meaning low income housing, and that's not what affordable housing is. Affordable housing is what's affordable to you with what you make. And it's supposedly 30% or less of what you make that makes your home affordable, what you can afford, and we're well above the 30% for anybody, no matter where you are. So as we talk, we're talking about new projects that have come along. The Starway project is a very unique project. We partner with the county on that. And developers, where you're going to see a very unique project where it's 30% AMI, it's 60% AMI, and it's 80% AMI, where you truly have a mixed income development. And I think it's over 300 and something units on Carolina Beach Road. And again, the gift and the curse, because you put 300 units on Carolina Beach Road, and then you got another traffic problem. But, you know, again, the gift and the curse. So.
Marlowe?
Thank you. I'll probably hit a lot of the same points, but I think the reality of where we are in Wilmington is that we know we're running out of space, right? So we need to think about development as being vertical. We need to think about development as being more dense, and we need to think about development as being multi-use in terms of how we grow. The other big portion of that, and we've talked a little bit about it, is to have different AMI price points within that development so that we can ensure that individuals are able to buy into a home that they can afford and that's affordable to them. We also have to have good developer partners who are willing to say, look, if I'm going to have 30% of AMI or 50% of AMI or 80% of AMI within my development, it can't only be a 1, 2, or 3 year situation for that homeowner. It has got to be a long-term lock for that individual to build equity in their home, and developers need to be committed to that. It needs to be a partnership. There are a few other things that we can do, you know, looking at increasing gap financing for affordable housing projects. We can work on that. We need to invest in underserved communities and ensure we don't have gentrification and displacement of individuals who are in homes that they can't afford, whereas if you look at a new development, they may not be able to afford that home that replaces their home. We need to make sure we support those communities, and we need to support community resources that are targeted at addressing the affordable housing issue. So those would be the things that I would focus on.
Thank you. All right, so we talked about where we work, we talked about where we live. Let's talk about how we get from point A to point B. I'm talking about the easiest fix, public transportation. David, I want to start with you. Fix public transportation in 2 minutes.
Well, if we had a silver bullet on transportation, I would shoot it, and I think if we had a silver bullet on transportation, it would have been shot already. Whether it is a failure to plan 20 years ago or a choice not to adequately fund what needed to be funded 20 years ago, we find ourselves in a situation where I think just about everybody in Wilmington and just about everybody in our region is incredibly frustrated with our transportation system. So as somebody who is going to spend the next 50 years of my life in this city, I'm deeply invested in making sure that we have city councilors and local leaders who are going to be not just smart about this, but are visionaries about this. Not what should transportation look like next week, what can transportation look like next week, next year, the next 10 years. And so when we talk about that, I'm really excited about the opportunities that we have with rail, both with our rail realignment, as well as getting passenger rail from Wilmington to Raleigh, reconnecting us to that statewide system, And then even light rail, what's the possibility for light rail moving forward? Now, this is not something that City Council can do all on its own. We understand that we are connected to our partners throughout the region, in New Hanover County and the other municipalities, and some in Brunswick County, some in Pender County. We have to be smart about who City Council is sending as delegates to that. But we also have to be smart about what we're going to do moving forward with issues like wave transit. The city of Wilmington continues to be a strong funder of wave transit. If you look at the money that we've spent, we come in second after money that comes from the federal government. The next highest funder is not a municipality. The next highest funder is not the county. The next highest funder is UNCW. And when the city of Wilmington's paying some $1.6 million into the wave budget, and the next highest payer is UNCW at $800,000, we have to be smart. We have to pressure other local leaders to pay their fair share and to make sure that we're getting the investment in wave that we all deserve. I'm running out of time. I could talk about transportation forever. I've got cards at the front. You can get my personal number. Let's have that conversation.
Thank you. Kevin?
Well, I cannot solve the transportation issue in 2 minutes. I have not been able to solve the transportation issue in 4 years. But we have worked to do better. We brought about a transportation bond last year that somehow it got tanked. It didn't get pushed as it needed to be pushed. Some people felt as if they were bearing the burden for poor people to get around Wilmington. And that's just not what we need. So WAVE needs its own funding source. Year after year, we have to come around, as I look out at Paul Lawler in the audience, and find a way to fund WAVE. And we have to keep putting in money. The city puts in money. The county puts in money. As David said, UNCW puts in money. But we had a fix for the transportation issue as it relates to WAVE last year, and some voters who weren't us decided that that was not a good decision to make. So what will we do next? What will we do next? We talked about at our last city council meeting, we talked about a new development that will go on 3rd and Wooster. And there was not a traffic impact analysis study put in place, but the idea was we're going to try to foster more public transportation, more ridership. Well, if you look at the study that took place 2 years ago when consultants came in to help WAVE, they talked about cutting routes. So how are you going to do that? And I asked staff the question, are we in the know? Do we know if ridership is on an uptick? It's not. I don't think it is. What can we do to create people to get on better, safer, green transportation in our community?
Salette?
Yeah, so traffic is the #1 issue in Wilmington. We have a taxpayer-funded community survey every 2 years. And in 2021, Wilmington did a community survey, paid for by all of you, and it is still not up on the website. And so one thing I think we should do is, if we're spending taxpayer money to ask the taxpayers what they want, we should at least be publishing that and getting it out there. The second thing is about the quarter-cent sales tax that we had on the ballot in 2022. It wasn't a bond, it was a quarter-cent sales tax. And we all know that sales taxes are regressive, tolls are regressive, and that transportation benefits everybody. It raises everybody's property value if we can help beat the bottlenecks and get Wilmington moving. And so we do need to look at an actual transportation bond. We haven't had one since 2014. It's been almost 10 years. Bonds do tend to pass better than sales taxes. People don't like sales taxes, not because they necessarily think they're regressive, but if you remember in 2022, we were also in a time when people were very afraid of inflation, and a bond is a maybe tax in the future. We definitely need to have a progressive tax that's tied to property values to help solve Wilmington's #1 problem that our taxpayers have told us is their #1 problem, and that's transportation.
Marlowe?
Yeah, so a couple of things. I typically think of traffic and transportation is tied together, right? So the city of Wilmington is a city of several choke points that really exacerbate our traffic problem. Because if you look at it as a whole as a city, we don't have a terrible traffic problem, but you get in those choke points and you feel the pain of the traffic in the city of Wilmington. So I think we need to invest in reducing those choke points to let traffic flow better. That's the first thing. The second thing is our public transit system needs to make sense and needs to follow job growth, right? If you look at the city, we've got great public transit north to south. We do not have great public transit east to west. And when you look at the job creation and where the economic opportunities are, they are flowing east to west. So we've got to figure that out. And we need to figure it out in a way that makes sense, right? We need to have, city Uber services. We need to have smaller buses that can address some of the need. It may not be the large wave buses that solve the problem, but we can do some unique things as a city to address the traffic problem. Obviously, the city needs to be more walkable. I felt the pain coming from Raleigh, North Carolina, moving here. And the first thing my wife said to me is, oh my gosh, if we're trying to cross the street from Lincoln Forest to the Harris Teeter on the other side of Oleander, how do we do it without playing Frogger and dodging all the cars? So we have to make the city more walkable. And the last thing I'd say is that we really do need to invest in our aging infrastructure. So if we do those things, I think we can go a long way in addressing the traffic and the transportation issues.
All right, I want to switch gears a little bit. This is a topic you may remember from a couple of years ago. I haven't heard as much about it lately, and that is police accountability and the city's role in overseeing the Wilmington Police Department. And I'm curious how you would approach that issue, or if you would not touch that radioactive potato. Marlowe, I'll start with you.
Oh, thank you. And for that, I appreciate it. Now, this has been interesting because I've gotten a lot of feedback from individuals about my focus under the public safety umbrella on juvenile crime. And I'm just going to be blunt. Black guy talking about juvenile crime, the first thing that comes to mind is people say black kids with guns and gangs. There is a crime issue, there is a juvenile crime issue, there is a gang issue. That is the reality. And I'm going to work against that in partnership with the Wilmington Police Department. I talk about it a lot as it relates to the schools. My kids go to Harvard High School, but if you ask parents at Ashley, you ask parents at Hanover, they are talking about addressing the crime before it comes into the schools because they don't want their kids shot at. And I feel the pain of that. And when I have those conversations, I don't want my kids shot at. The second thing that we need to do is really focus on interventions, right? My son, again, the Taekwondo star, when he gets out of school at 3:40, he is going to the dojon, and he is in the dojon from 4 p.m. until 8 p.m. He has no time to engage in crime. And so when I think about organizations like LINK, like Boys and Girls Club, like the First Tee program, that is how we keep our young people focused on things that create opportunity, things that invest in them, things that push them forward, versus allowing them to pursue a life of crime. So I am front and center on crime. I don't make any apologies for it. I'm going to be dogged on that issue, and I hope you will join me in that fight.
Okay. Salette?
No matter who you... Oh, sorry. Got it? No matter who you are, or where you live, or what you look like, you ought to be able to feel safe in your home, on the streets, in the parks, in the schools. And we need to all be accountable to each other for public safety. We need a police force that is responsibly resourced, that is accountable to the communities that it serves, and that looks like the communities that it serves. We need to all be accountable for public safety. Crime, we do have good news. Violent crime is actually at a 10-year low, which is great news. But did you know that 3 times as many Wilmingtonians die from drug overdoses as they do from gunfire? And that 77% of those drug overdoses are linked to one drug, and that's fentanyl. And we need to be proactive in saving people's lives and getting those dangerous drugs off the street. We need to work with our state and federal agencies to keep those drugs out of our country, out of our state and out of our city. And finally, you hear me talk a lot about public surveys because I really like them, and if we're going to pay for them, we should pay attention to them. And they really are a good tool to talk to communities that might not be asked their opinion. I've talked to people who don't look like me, and they don't trust our local police. And I get it that people who do look like me may not have had bad experiences with the police, but there are plenty of people in this community who have. And one of the things that I would like for the city to do, because other cities are doing this, is they're doing a public community survey that's geared specifically toward public safety and how people feel about the police.
Thank you. Kevin?
Thank you, Ben. Again, I am the only person who can sit here and say that they have a great understanding and a great working relationship with law enforcement in this community. I have worked with law enforcement in this community well before I became an elected official. And as an inner city Wilmington native, I understand the importance of proper policing, the importance of community policing. And I have had a great relationship with Chief Ralph Evangelist. I have a even greater relationship with Chief Donnie Williams. I have a even greater relationship with the newly appointed Deputy Chief Kelvin Hargrove. And what we've done in this community, and Salette said it perfectly, crime is down. But I think we're in somewhat of it's about perspectives, where we are in this community and what we see. And sorry, Ben, but sometimes the media paints it like we're in this scary, scary place and that we can't come outside of our doors. And that's not necessarily true. And to what Marlowe said, we don't necessarily have a gang issue. We have a people with guns issue who claim to be in gangs. When you hear about an issue between two people, the first thing to say is, oh, it was gang related. Okay, one person was in a gang, the other person was in the gang, but they were arguing or they got into a dispute over the woman that day, and that's not a gang issue. Gangs don't control the behavior of whomever. So it's perspectives and how we look at things. And so I have worked, I continue to work. Again, I'm the only person that picks up the phone, the only person that gets out and talks with people. I'm the only person that has that rapport in this community to help drive crime down.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
David?
Thanks very much. So I'm the only person running for city council this year in any party that works full-time in public safety. And as I mentioned earlier, I work as an assistant district attorney for our elected DA, Ben David. And when we're talking about police accountability, and we're talking about our first responders in Wilmington, North Carolina, I am the only person who can tell you that I have both nominated law enforcement officers for accolades for their heroic work in our community and reported other officers to the SBI for engaging in behavior that they should not have engaged in. I think that we have to honor the wonderful work of our police officers and our sheriff's deputies and our law enforcement community, because we understand that when we have law enforcement officers who don't respect the folks that they're supposed to be serving, who don't make the choices and who do not have the training to effectively do their jobs and are not respecting people's civil rights, they bring us all down. They bring their fellow law enforcement officers down, and they bring our community as a whole down. In my work as an assistant district attorney, the knowledge that I'm going to bring to our conversation about Wilmington Police Department and about public safety focuses on 3 specific areas that I think we have to be concerned about. Number 1 is gun violence, number 2 is the opioid crisis, and number 3 is family violence and violence against women. Specifically, we've been talking a little bit tonight on this panel about drugs and about fentanyl. I am here to tell you tonight, as the lead DWI prosecutor for Wilmington Police Department DWI cases, my concern has transitioned away from alcohol and onto drugs. How do we address that? Well, if you've ever watched a movie in which somebody got pulled over by the police for DWI, they had to blow into an instrument that told the officer approximately where their alcohol content was. We don't have that instrument when it comes to drugs. When it comes to somebody who is making the choice to smoke or to shoot up and then get behind the wheel of a car, And I want to separate the addict behavior from the choice to get behind a car. But when they to get behind the wheel of a car, but when they make that choice, we don't have an instrument to test what they're on. We need drug recognition experts, which is a certification that we can specifically pay to have our Wilmington Police Department officers trained in, and we need to make sure that our local crime lab is able to process those samples once they've been taken, those blood samples.
Thank you. Hey, Kevin, I'm glad you said that, because we could do a whole panel on the way the media has misreported and racialized and deranged this whole conversation, and another time, another place, we have that whole conversation, but you ain't wrong.
I try not.
All right. I know that we probably have some audience questions, so this might be my last question from the podium, unless y'all get very shy very quickly. And I want to ask about the situation of Wilmington's unhoused citizens, our unhoused brothers and sisters. Marlowe, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, tough, right? The Good Shepherd Center does incredible work in addressing that issue and supporting people. But I think it goes back to the earlier conversation we had about affordable housing. We have to have partnerships with nonprofits, interventions by local government in order to support the chronically unhoused. And it's a slow step-by-step process. And unfortunately, it's a slow build. It goes back to not allowing gentrification. If there's an opportunity to buy homes at a lower price point to get an individual started in home buying, that is what we need to do. And if we need to come alongside them as members of city council in partnership with nonprofits that can support that effort, those are the types of organizations we need to invest in. And what I hope we'll see over time is that if we do that, then as they build equity in their home, there's an opportunity for continued growth in home ownership. And we know, that real estate and home ownership is one of the principal ways that people grow their wealth. And so if they have the opportunity to buy that first home, if we could be supportive in that, if we could partner with those agencies that come alongside them, that's the work I would do to start initially with the unhoused population.
All right, David?
Thanks very much. So I'm headed to the Good Shepherd Center tomorrow to meet with folks there who are experts in this area, to meet some of the folks who use those services regularly. And then I'm actually also scheduled to go and volunteer there with St. James Episcopal Church on Thursday night this week. So I'm going to be making 2 trips pretty quickly back to back. I think I'm somebody who supports a housing first policy when we're talking about homelessness and making sure that the experiences that I've had as a prosecutor, particularly working with our veterans treatment courts and seeing that you cannot just police and trespass and criminalize your way out of homelessness, but you actually have to surround people with the resources that they need to get out of whatever their circumstances are. Going back to the work that I've done as the community recovery court prosecutor for our DA's office, we have a number of folks who are justice involved because they are in active addiction, and I certainly want to separate active addiction from homelessness. Those things are not necessarily co-occurring, although there are some people who are experiencing both. What I'm getting at is that the lessons that I've learned working with folks in the criminal justice system who are in active addiction, who are in our recovery courts, getting the help that they need on their probationary sentence, so often what I'm seeing is that the failures come from not having the resources that they need. Again, which gets me back to the housing first policy and making sure that we're looking at solutions to get folks into housing as quickly as possible to get them off the streets, so that once they've got the house over their head, once they've got that piece, they can then move forward to getting the medical services that they need, getting the employment that they need, oftentimes reconnecting with their family, because we know the havoc that homelessness and unhoused folks experience when it comes to their family dynamics.
Kevin?
So again, I think it's about perspective, but I just want to say this first. It's about treating people like people. So no matter what we perceive our community to be, we have a homelessness issue. The United States is experiencing a homelessness issue. And so it doesn't look good for us to sit at the light and see people who are there begging and walking, pacing up and down the median. But it's reality. And it shouldn't be frowned upon because we live in a certain area code. 28412, 28411, 28405. We feel like we shouldn't have to see these things because of where we live and how much taxes we pay for our home and, you know, what kind of car we drive or whatever. They're humans. And so what we have to do, we have to partner with organizations to help people look at it as a humanitarian issue. That's what it is. What have we as a society done to neglect people? And understand that it's not just about drugs. It's not about crime. It's about people who feel safer outside. They don't want to come inside at times. They feel safer outside in the woods. And it may not be because they don't have money. It may be because they just choose to be outside. Some of them are, they have sources of income. They just choose to be outside for whatever reason. It may be some mental illness. There may be just some safer. They may just feel safer outside, but, you know, again, it's about perspective and how you interact with people and how you see people. And it looks like a eyesore or you know, to people who feel like, you know, we're beyond this, but it's not. It's a humanitarian issue.
Thank you. So,
I'm losing my mic here. I just wanted to piggyback on what David was saying and Kevin, that permanent supportive housing, aka Housing First policy, is absolutely the way to go as far as dealing with homeless people. And if you don't know, we have a sitting city council member who believes that Housing First is, what was the term that he used? Not best practices, as if he knows more than our partner organizations in the community about how to go about housing the unhoused population. So I think, you know, elections have consequences. It's really important that we get people on the city council who have progressive values, who believe in our partner organizations like the Good Shepherd Center, who are working so hard to provide permanent supportive housing, to provide a Housing First policy, to get people off the streets and into wraparound services that can help them get on with their lives.
thank you guys all very much. Real quick, show of hands in the audience. Do you guys know what Housing First is? I just don't want to leave you with any confusion. All right, hands if you have no idea what Housing First is. Okay, so just a real quick, Housing First means you don't require people to hit benchmarks for sobriety or employment before you give them a place to live. So that's kind of the difference here.
We have a bunch of audience questions, and here's a few more.
I love these because these aren't my fault.
Thank you.
Okay, here we go. And I'm gonna cut through some of the niceties of this. How would you represent black people? David.
Sure.
How would you represent black people and maybe a little broader other marginalized communities? But I get this question all the time, and it's usually what they're talking about.
So I want to acknowledge first and foremost that I'm the only white man who's sitting on this stage. I do think that Wilmington City Council importantly needs to reflect the people who live here. I am the only LGBTQ candidate in this race, and so I understand what it means to see politicians who don't always fit the same mold that I fit, to wonder what their policies are going to be because their lived experiences are different than mine. And I'm curious, do they get it? Are they really listening, or are they just using this as a talking point because it's the new flashy, shiny thing in the Democratic Party or in politics? I have shown throughout this campaign so far that I am willing to go and speak to people who have different viewpoints than me, who have different ideas than me. Not because I think that that's what I have to do to be elected. I'm doing that because that's what a city councilor needs to do if they want to represent all people. That's what a candidate needs to do if they want to build a coalition, and that's what a leader needs to do if they're going to lead a community. Specifically, how am I going to represent black people on Wilmington City Council? I'm going to talk to black people in Wilmington and ask them what their experiences are like and what their views not just generally on Wilmington City Council, but ask them specifically, how is affordable housing affecting you? What are the environmental justice issues that are affecting you personally? What can we do to fix those? How can I help? That's the way that I'm going to approach that issue.
Salette?
I just think that, we are all in this together, and that a vibrant, great city supports all of its citizens and gives everybody a chance to thrive. Shortly after the Civil War, Wilmington was thriving. It was a majority black city. During the 1920s, I believe, that went down to like 20% African American, and in the 1990s, it went down to 13%, where it hovers today. And that's a problem, because for whatever reason, African Americans often find that they have economic opportunity in other cities, in Atlanta, in Charlotte, and not so much here. So Wilmington as a city needs to provide economic opportunities for all of its citizens, and we as city council members need to absolutely represent everybody.
Marlowe?
Yeah, so, the job of a city council person is to represent the citizens of the city. That includes everyone. And the issues that I am talking about as it relates to the specific question of how I would represent black people are also issues at the core for black people. Job creation. When we talk about business incubation and ensuring that small business owners have the opportunity to develop a good business plan, start their own business, and grow that business. We know the vast majority of employment comes from small business. That's an issue for black people as well as other people. If we talk about public safety, we've talked about the issue of juvenile crime. We've talked about the opioid crisis. That cuts across socioeconomic lines and racial lines. So that is an issue for black people, but it's also an issue for all citizens in Wilmington. And the third is housing affordability. Again, an issue for black people, but an issue for all the citizens of Wilmington. And so my job in this campaign and as a member of city council is to focus on those issues. And if I'm successful in delivering on those issues, I'm not only delivering for black people in the city of Wilmington, but I'm delivering for all Wilmingtonians.
And Kevin?
I am black. Been black for 46 years now. I just know what it means, and I'll tell you this, I take this job personally. I take being black personally. So when we talk about the issues, I'll give you a specific issue. We can give cliche answers, but can you answer this? What happened? And what was the problem with where the Black Lives Do Matter sign was? So that's where we are as a city government. A sign that was a placeholder to say, hey, black citizens of Wilmington, North Carolina, and not just Wilmington, North Carolina, but surrounding places who came to visit to say, hey, we understand there's a struggle. We understand that we're here in 2020 at the time, or maybe 2021, that there's still an issue. And we want to put this sign up that says, maybe we have not done the best job for you, but we acknowledge that the work has to be done, that we will do the work. And then the sign got moved. There wasn't one complaint. There wasn't one issue of destruction towards that sign. And my fellow council members said, okay, 2 years was long enough. We get it. We don't get it. So no, you can't come through with some nice song, nice response to say, hey, we understand black people, it's tough.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you. Okay, this is another question. I'm going to do the super quick version of this just by a show of hands. Who thinks the city's non-discrimination policy should go further? Okay, who thinks it should go a lot further? All right, there you go. This is a tough one because it's the reality. And David, I'll start with you. How do you plan to work with your Republican colleagues to effect change?
How many folks in here have Republican relatives? I've got a whole lot of them, and I love them very much. And sometimes they make me want to pull my hair out when we talk about politics. And, you know, that's just the reality of living in southeastern North Carolina. We are a purple, Wilmington in particular is a purple area. If we are going to be so, if we are going to dig our heels in the sand and say, no, we're not willing to work with anybody else who disagrees with us or who doesn't look like us or who doesn't vote like us, then nothing is ever going to get you achieved. Nothing is ever going to be achieved. I think that we do have some opportunities with this being a nonpartisan race, and many of the issues that come before City Council are nonpartisan. They really are issues that affect the people who live here day to day. What is your quality of life? What is your experience getting from one side of town to the other? What is your experience going home and talking to your family about your day to day? You don't have to put an R or a D beside of that. But you do have to be committed to the values that you set out to be committed to when you run for office. You do have to follow through and be the same person on inauguration day that you are when you're up here on this panel when you're at the voting booth shaking hands and trying to get people in the parking lot to vote for you. How am I going to be committed to working with people in that way? Well, as an attorney, I have to work with people who are fundamentally opposed to me in every sense of the word on the case that I work with each and every day. And I hope you ask around the Hanover County Bar and find that I can be a reasonable person, I can be an agreeable person, and I can fight for the interests of my client, the state of North Carolina, the people who live here in Wilmington, North Carolina, and can also respect other people's points of view and find issues or and find ways that we can compromise and we can, instead of standing across from each other and yelling at each other, sit side by side, lay things out, and look to what we can work on together and achieve.
Kevin?
Wake up, David. It's not how politics works. Sorry. The Wilmington City Council is very much partisan. New Hanover County, the city of Wilmington is very much partisan. But if you look at the things that I gained the most notoriety from, it's from going at it with, you know, Mr. Rivenbark. But I don't get the same notoriety when I go along with the rest of the council on issues that are much softer and are much easier and that appease their base. I don't get the credit for voting for those things or going along with those things. I get the notoriety for standing up for things that the rest of the majority of the city council just can't find it in themselves to do right. That's the issue with politics. So you talk about an R and a D. Sorry, don't throw any tomatoes at me. But there are just as many bad Democrats as there are bad Republicans. Let's just be honest about it. So where you find, I'm looking, I don't want the rest of you to steal this. I'm looking for good voters. I'm looking for good people. I want to resonate in the minds and the hearts of good people who want to see a change in our community. That's how we push this thing forward.
So,
I'm losing this, so I have to take it out and hold it. When I started my career in the Air Force as an air traffic controller, I learned that it takes teamwork and a focus on a mission to get anything done. And nobody asked anybody in the air traffic control tower or in the radar facility what their political party was, what their religion was. You need to just work with people and get things done. I was on a town council in Arizona where Democrats were the third party, and I still won with more votes than anybody in the town's history as a known progressive, because frankly, there's no Democrat or Republican way to fill a pothole. There's no Democrat or Republican way to solve a lot of the problems that we have facing our city. And it really takes us working together to get big things done.
Marlowe?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, working across the aisle, if members of Wilmington City Council hold my same values and believe in the things that I'm campaigning on and going to talk about as a council member, making sure that we have great job creation, making sure that we're addressing public safety, making sure that we're looking at housing affordability. If they believe in those things, then we have an opportunity to build consensus and build partnership and deliver results. So my hope is that we'll have council members who are focused on those things. I've spent my entire career building consensus. I worked in government affairs for Fortune 50 companies, and I've had to bring a lot of competing interests together to get things done for corporate entities, working on different types of legislation. So I have that demonstrated ability over the course of my career to deliver that. I'll tell you a funny story. Before I came here, I had a conversation with someone, and he said, "Marlowe, I am writing my first campaign check ever to a candidate. First one in my entire life." And he said, "I'm writing it to a Democrat, and I'm a lifelong Republican." Because, and the reason I tell you that story is because when I talked to him about the issues that I'm focused on and the passion around those issues, he said, "No, Marlowe, it's not about you being a Democrat. It's about you being a person who's focused on the right issues for this city, and those are not partisan issues." So again, I say if I can find Republican partners who will come alongside me and focus on those issues and help me deliver, that's how I'll build consensus and get things done.
All right. I've got one more. I'd like to ask if you guys have a couple more minutes. Yes? All right. So this is the question. How are you planning to make Wilmington a place for children? And they're not just talking about education because that's not directly your problem, but in bringing kids in and making them part of the community. So David, I'll start with you.
So when I talk about the barometer that I have for housing affordability, again, I'm talking about, can our teachers afford to live here? Can our healthcare workers afford to live here? And can our first responders afford to live here? Pick any first or second grader you know and ask them what they want to be when they grow up. How many of them are going to fall in that category? And how many of us actually believe that it's very likely that those students in Wilmington, North Carolina are going to grow up and have that profession and live in Wilmington, North Carolina? I see a lot of people shaking their head because we know that all too often young people don't come back from college, move away because they can't afford to live here, can't afford to go to college here. We know that that's just not the reality for what's happening, and we've got to fight that, we've got to fix that. I'm talking, I come from a generation where a lot of my peers are starting their families, and we are at a crossroads when it comes to whether or not our families are going to be rooted here in Wilmington, because can we afford to live here? Are we going to have to afford to live outside of the city? Are we going to have to afford to commute in to work here? Or are we just going to throw our hands up and move across the state? Like I said, I'm an 8th generation Eastern North Carolinian. I want to put my roots down here. I'm going to be here for the next 50 years of my life. And these are the kinds of issues that we have to think about, young adults and young families, making sure that we can have vibrant communities for our kids. You're right when you allude to the fact that there's a limitation on the powers of government when it comes to what we can do about our education system. But I think making sure that when those kids are released, when the school bell rings, they have a place to go, they have partners in the community that they can rely on and they can trust, making sure that that's there. And then going back to my work as an attorney and as an assistant district attorney working with juvenile crime, making sure that we are keeping kids out of our justice system, making sure that we are not strengthening the school to prison pipeline. We're putting appropriate diversionary programs into place. We're getting kids the support that they need instead of criminalizing schoolhouse bad conduct, and just being a championing for those issues.
So I'm really sorry about this. I blame the school board.
So I really didn't want to be here tonight because for a year I've been planning on being with my grandson tonight. They flew in last night and they're at home. So I've got my 5-year-old grandson enjoying my 5-month-old puppy, not unsupervised. And so I have been exploring Wilmington now from a child's perspective. And it's really a great place for kids. I think one of the things that the city can do is really expand some of the classes that they offer through their Parks and Rec program, through their Parks Department. We've lived, as a military family, we've lived all over the country, and we've lived in places where they had wonderful classes for kids of all interest groups. My daughter, when she was 11, was taking classes on African violets and African violet propagation when we were in Fairfax County, and she was the only child in the room. But just to have that opportunity to have those classes available through the Parks and Rec system is a way so that retired people, adults, and even older teens can teach what they know to younger children and just provide that cultural enrichment within the city.
I think if we're going to make Wilmington a place for children, we have to make it a place for parents, right? And that goes back to the core issues I'm talking about over the course of this campaign. It goes back to job creation. How are we attracting companies to Wilmington or growing companies in Wilmington that provide gainful employment that allow parents to take care of their kids? That makes Wilmington a place for kids. How are we addressing the affordable housing issue, which we've talked a lot about tonight? If we can get parents into a good home that provides a good environment and a safe environment for their children, that makes Wilmington a place for kids. How do we address public safety? How do we address the opioid crisis, the fentanyl crisis? How do we address safety in schools? I had a conversation with a Wilmington police officer at Portia Hines Park during Juneteenth celebration, and I talk a lot about gunfire in schools, and people say, well, Marlowe, that's a school board or that's a sheriff's office. And I say it's a safety issue with schools inside the city limits, and I want to make sure that's addressed. And he said, Marlowe Foster, you are exactly right. When there comes to those issues, it is an all of law enforcement response, and we are going to be there to ensure that those kids are safe. That makes the city of Wilmington a place for kids. And the last thing I'll say is that we need to ensure that as we do all of these things, that we create the environment that kids can see their future here, that they can model the opportunities that their parents have, that they see gainful employment opportunities. And so for me, that's how we address making Wilmington a city for kids.
Kevin?
I think you make Wilmington a place for kids by leading by example. This is one of the very rare moments where you see me without my daughter, my 5-year-old daughter. 4 years ago, she was given the title as my campaign manager. She was 1. She was everywhere I went. I had a backpack on with bottles and diapers in the back, and her mom, who works in the healthcare industry, worked night. She was at home sleeping. I was taking her everywhere I could take her. But you don't often hear me talk about my grandchildren. Yes, I have 2 grandchildren, 2 boys. I'm creating a legacy here. I'm creating something where you say the last name Spears and they will be often asked, are you related to Councilman Kevin Spears? We appreciate what he's done for the community. They will walk around with their chest and their heads held high. They will understand that you are determined, you are destined to be great because you choose to be great. No matter what this society has thrown at me, I continue to thrive. It's been tough. It's still tough as a councilman. Sometimes I encounter situations that I feel I should be so far removed from. But what do? I come back and I fight for what's right. I create policy. I don't create a back door. If you come to me and you have an issue, I don't say, well, you know what, let me make a call. No, I create policy. I talk to staff. How can we rectify the issues that are taking place in our community? No, I don't have to every time take it before 6 other council members. You know, you have to understand the authority that you have, and you want to create a better place. That's just not a cliche thing that you can say. That's work that you do. And if you talk about Kevin Spears, you're talking about a body of work. You're talking about leading by example.
Thank you all. So I do want to say, I know there are a lot of questions we didn't get to, like dredging the harbor and water quality and the Thermo Fisher penthouse, building purchase and the $20 drinks at Live Nation. It's a sleeper hit. And the Wilmington Housing Authority and whether or not power lines should be buried and whatever happened to the Galleria, is that ever getting built? But I've had a chance to speak with these candidates and they bend over backwards to talk to their public, so I encourage you to ask them those very tough questions and then tell me what they said. But in the little time we have left, I want to give you all a chance to make some closing remarks, wrap it up, cover anything you missed. So we'll just go in the same order we went when we started. David, I'll start with you.
So I'm doing first opening and first closing.
We can flip a coin if you want.
Happy to do it. I just want to say thank you so much for being involved in our municipal elections and for caring about what's happening in Wilmington, North Carolina. Elections at this level, in my opinion, are really where so much gets done and have the most impact on people's day-to-day lives. So thank you for being a part of that, and I want to invite you to continue to be a part of that by being a part of my campaign. DavidForWilmington.com is a website that I've set up to start organizing my campaign, and at David Joyner ILM on social media if you want to follow me there. I'm looking to build out a campaign team, like I said, who's focused on affordable housing, clean water, transportation, and public safety, and I invite you to be a part of that. We're building a coalition of young people who are motivated, particularly around the environment, and I'm really proud to be doing that. I feel like that's incredibly authentic to what I have always felt as a voter and what got me interested in politics moving forward. I'm somebody in the past few elections who has been involved by knocking doors and by phone banking and by fundraising a little bit of money and making sure that people were engaged and people didn't know what was happening in the community. And so I got to a point where I said, what would it take for a young person to run? What would it take for an LGBTQ person to run? And what would it take for somebody who's concerned about the environment to run? And that's how I got onto the stage in front of you tonight. I really appreciate the discussion that we've had. I want to thank the other candidates for their time and their support as we've continued to get to know each other and have shared things throughout this campaign. And I'm looking forward to working hard all the way to November. Again, I really appreciate your vote. You can vote for 3 of us. I'd love to be one of your 3. Thank you so much.
Four years ago, I challenged you with the task of putting my body to work up against anybody else. It paid off. Here we are. I again challenge you with the task of putting my body to work up against anybody else and daring anybody else to care about this community more than me. There's not one person. And I think we are here with some great people, and there's some great elected officials in this community. But there are not any that care about this community, sorry Rob, more than me. I am a Wilmingtonian. I understand the good, the bad, the ugly. I deal with it. I get calls from parents that have children in school. I don't dare hang up the phone and say, no, sorry, that's a school board issue. I help them. I have parents who children are involved in things, or parents who have children who they have dreams, and they call me. I have parents who have dreams who call me. I have citizens who have potholes, they call me. I have people who, want to go to affordable concerts at one of our great amphitheaters, and they're being priced out. They're being beat out and buying tickets, but they call me. We work through this thing together. We will continue to work through these issues together. We will continue to be a community. I think there was a time when I said community, some people said, oh, he's only talking about the black community. That's not true. We are a community. Again, we are a close-knit community, and there are new people coming in. We welcome you to come here, but we welcome you to come here and get on board with what we're trying to do, to continue the legacy, not the bad one, not the November the 10th, 1898 legacy, but a new legacy, the legacy that happened in not 1965, but 1865.
I am so proud to be sitting up in the front of this room, to be looking out of this room at all of you who I've gotten to know over the past few years, as now a precinct chair of precinct W31, and I see a lot of our peeps out here. Thanks for joining us. But also working with doing and organizing a lot of the precinct walks that we did. We got some of our great candidates that we had in 2022 that walked with us, and other precinct chairs that I see out there from our Midtown cluster and other folks. And so I'm just so happy and proud to be here. And I just want to let you know that I'm a hard worker. I think you've learned that over the past few years. And I would very much appreciate your vote, because I'm here to fight for you, for all of Wilmington, because we're all in this together. Thank you very much.
First of all, I want to thank you for the investment of your time this evening on a Monday night where I'm sure you could be doing some other things, so thank you so much for being here. I thought I'd close with a quote from President Obama that I think kind of sums up what we're all doing here. He said, "That's when America," and I would substitute the word Wilmington, "that's when Wilmington soars. When we look out for one another and we take care of each other, when we root for one another's success, when we strive to do better and be better than the generation that came before us, and try building something better for generations to come. That's why we do what we do. This is the whole point of public service. That is why I'm a candidate for Wilmington City Council. That is why I'm doing what I'm doing. I know we have significant challenges ahead of us, but we can do it together, and it's going to take a partnership, everybody in this room rowing in the same way to get it done. And I'm asking you to come alongside me in that journey. I'm asking you to do it with a smile on your face. You will always see me smiling, and I'm asking you to do it by having some fun in the process. We've got to do it. We've got to be positive. So I ask for your vote in November, and I also ask for you to identify 10 more people that you can bring to this campaign for Wilmington City Council. Ask them to consider voting for me, and ask them to get to know me better. So with that, thank you very much, and appreciate it being here.
All right, well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, so much for your time this evening. Bear Sappho used to close everything with something to the effect of, "Thank you for taking an interest in your city government." Is that it? I used to think that was cheesy as hell, but I've actually grown very fond of that saying. So thank you all for taking an interest in your city government. Have a good night.
Let's give all of them and Ben Schachtman a round of applause for great work. Thank you all so much for attending tonight. We'll have other opportunities to talk to candidates too, but thank you again for tonight. Have a great night.
Thank you. Great time. Sir? Good to see you, Dave.